Welcome and thank you for joining us for this webinar. My name is Beatrice Dupuy and I'm the director of Circle. I'm joined today by Kate Mackay, Associate Director, and Marissa Laguirre, Outreach Coordinator. We'll get started in just a few minutes, but in the meantime, please check your sound and in the chat drop where you're joining us today. All right, we are a few minutes past the top of the hour, so it's time to get started with a few announcements first. For those of you who are not already familiar with Circle, we are one of 16 language resource centers that until recently were funded under Title VI by the U.S. Department of Education. Our mission is to develop and provide quality instructional materials and professional learning opportunities to language educators. Circle is housed in the College of Humanities here at the University of Arizona. For more information about Circle's history and impact, and what LRCs as a whole do and the resources we offer, you can visit the links on this slide. On this map, you can see where each center is located in the United States. Our Intercultural Competence Conference will start next week. We have several post-conference workshops in different modalities that you can register for. Please visit the link at the bottom of the slide for more information. Today's webinar is the third of a three-part series that is focused on integrating AI in language education. Recordings of our 2024-2025 webinar series and previous webinar series are available, and the recording of the first and second webinars in the current series are now available for viewing. To access them, please go to our YouTube channel. Lastly, I would like to remind attendees of a few house rules for our webinar. The webinar experience works best if you're using the Zoom desktop app on a computer. Cameras and microphones are off. For the Q&A, use the Q&A to ask the presenter questions. And use the chat to introduce yourself, which like you're doing right now. Ask Circle staff technical questions, and remember to select everyone so that all attendees can see your post. Certificate of attendance for live participants are available. Please complete the webinar survey shared at the end of this event and request a certificate at the link you see after you click submit. Circle will email you after this webinar is over to find out if you would like a digital badge. Finally, Circle will let you know via email when the recording of this webinar will become available. It's now time for me to introduce our presenter, Dr. Christiane Reves. Christiane is a clinical assistant professor and language program director in the Department of German at New York University. Her work focuses on innovation in language pedagogy, with particular expertise in AI integration, intercultural teaching, and interdisciplinary curriculum design. Before joining New York University, she served as associate teaching professor and language program coordinator at Arizona State University, where she led initiatives on technology and language learning to expand student engagement. Her research examines the intersection of AI and language learning, emphasizing equitable access and proficiency development. She co-developed Language Buddy, an AI-powered speaking tool that supports asynchronous communication practice and has been featured in Nature, Inside Higher Ed, Best Colleges, and OpenAI's official blog. Reves holds a PhD in contemporary modern history from Julius Maximilians University in Würzburg, Germany, where she studied early modern migration and economic networks. She has also published and taught on German Jewish immigration, cultural memory, and identity. Recognized with multiple teaching and service awards, she continues to bridge technology, pedagogy, and global perspectives in higher education. With that said, Christiane, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction and for having me here today. I'm very excited and I'm looking forward to sharing some of my work that I've been doing using AI for teaching and to support our student learning from very different angles. So the title for today's talk will be Designing Immersive Learning Experiences in the Language Classroom, Leveraging AI for Interpersonal Communication. We obviously all know that AI is here to stay, and just would be interested to know for how have you been using AI for your students' learning, or for how did you prepare things for teaching? Is it vocabulary practice, writing assistance, speaking practice, or listening comprehension exercises, maybe grammar checking? Or translation. I think we have a Menti poll for this. Put your answers here. You can say more than one. It just would help us kind of read the room. So where are you at? What are you using it for? If at all, yeah. So as I said, there could be different options. I see also something for lesson planning, yeah. But we can see lots for writing assisted translation. Okay, that's also a big one. Grammar checking. Also vocabulary practice, we can see really a lot of different areas. Yeah, of course, we all use it for a variety of tasks and purposes, not just only one. That's what we can already see here. Um, yeah, interesting. Just wait a little bit more to see the graph here. As you can see, it's quite evenly. There's really a lot of different applications for AI and language learning and teaching, which makes us as language educators also a little bit of a forerunner, I think, for using AI. And I will get to that in a little bit. Okay, so maybe we can stop here with the poll. I think that gives us a good idea. It's very much for grammar and writing, slide, because this is a survey that was done in 2024. That's already old news on how students use language learn AI for language learning tasks. So they use it again mostly for grammar checking, and we know that it sometimes can't be that reliable. That also vocabulary practice, writing assistance. I can see that there's really similarities even with them. Like the lowest use case is actually speaking practice at this point. And then I have another question for you before we start. So, what is your like preferred way? How do you teach language? How do we help students to understand, remember, use new languages? What kinds of practice for you leads to proficiency? What makes learning, in your opinion, feel more meaningful and motivating? And we have another poll for this to kind of read the room. How are we teaching? What's our preferred way of teaching language? And this will be a Menti, but an open one, the way you can really just write your responses.
I can read you what they're writing in there.
Mm-hmm.
Medium of teaching, online versus in person. The
Mm-hmm.
scenario can be too artificial. Time for personalization, relevance to each student, getting authentic materials and settings, being able to offer enough feedback, student disengagement, engaging activities, online classes.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're all popping up. Creating tasks that allow for spontaneous interpersonal communication. Students at very different levels, not authentic situations,
Mm-hmm.
fluency. Sorry, that one went past too quickly for me.
Mm-hmm.
Lack of vocabulary, understanding what others say. Very few, actually. The only thing is some students might not be used to it. Inappropriate materials for the level and age, adult learners, especially beginners.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you
yeah.
so much. Yeah, I think as much as we love our gold standard in teaching and learning, which is communicative and teaching, it's immersive, authentic experiences, it is very, very difficult to create those assignments. They always look so effortless when we do them, when we introduce them in the class, but we have lots of challenges. Yes, we find these authentic materials, and then we have to find out, oh, even if it's a simple topic, like going shopping at a bakery. It is still rather maybe complex language or local regional dialects. Mostly videos are too fast for beginners. It's hard to understand. And even the easiest topic, I just recently showed a short video in my an intermediate course about the weather in New York because it was reported about in the German news. And it was 30, 45 seconds, and the vocabulary was so complex that I really had to work a lot on making it accessible for students. And it was just the weather and snow. But of course, we know how complex languages are. And then if we try to simplify it, very often it removes, and the cultural richness, it seems to be very basic and simple. Then it's again always about balancing what I had, a linguistic load versus conceptual depth, right? So how can we, yes, simplify, but still keep the meaning, keep the complexity of a topic. I heard for many people even, lack of vocabulary. How do we make vocabulary available so that they can do these role plays, that it's not as repetitive as it seems to be? And then, differentiation, heard much of this as well. So yes, we have a classroom, but there's always different students and different abilities, different personalities, and different needs. Yeah? So students want to perform the same activity, but they might need different kinds of support. And preparing all of this is very difficult, time-consuming, and hard to achieve because especially when you're thinking also beginner learners, you create this little assignment, but at the end of the day, it doesn't take longer than 5-10 minutes. And then you need to move to the next one. That creates a similar challenge for you. So the question is here, and this was like, there's different ways, and I'm sure you have too, and I will ask later I want to see what you have done so far. There's different ways how we can actually leverage AI and for creating some of these more complex communicative assignments. So I think most of you, I said I'm preaching to the choir, have probably used it in similar ways already. So one way would be to adjust language complexity, or scale to a certain task. So vary roles or input and output, create different personas based on a text. Create scaffolded assignments, maybe like, depending on people's, if you have mixed classes with different levels, tiered assignments and different difficulties or different tasks students have to perform, or create multiple versions of the same tasks by, for example, varying the grammar that you use in this case, or varying the persona. And then a last one that I will get to is also how we can use it for additional practice outside of class for online or independent learning. And yes, we all know, I think we all have our experiences and opinions, and how do we approach it? There's some of these people, hers, it's all about AI, let's do it. AI is the solution, and AI was not only the solution, but also will eventually replace everyone, probably even language educators. And on the other spectrum, we have people saying, well, we can't use it at all. It's dangerous. It's leading us in the wrong direction. One of my first project, and my first time I engaged with AI, was for the biggest need that I saw for my online students, which was the opportunity for speaking practice, which I will talk about it at the end of this talk. And in order to start my project, I really also was trying to see how can I, as an educator, use this tool as a tool for myself, not as a replacement. Yeah, so it was not, my goal was not to see how can I use AI to replace my teaching, but what is my pedagogical goal that I want to achieve when using AI, similar to with everything that we've been using in language learning. So I think very often, as talking to colleagues from other disciplines, you might notice that language educators are sometimes even a little bit more open to using and applying AI, because traditionally we've always been confronted with tech from all directions. I think language educators were some of the first to adopt video because we wanted the authentic experience for our students. PowerPoint, language labs, thinking back to the olden days, we had already tape recorders and students were practicing listening to authentic native speakers. So tech and language learning have actually always had a close relationship, and we still even use apps or other technology to enhance our classroom experience. So this was my starting point. So yes, there is AI, but I'm not seeing it as something to replace me, but to how can AI support my pedagogical goals that I have for my learners. So together with my colleague, Mariana from French at Arizona State Universities, we created a framework how we wanted to approach language using AI. And I used it mainly for the speaking and conversation practice in the beginning, but I'm also now applying it to all other ways that I'm using AI or even other technology. So first of all, what I've already said, we need to have the learner in mind. We need to look at the level. Yeah, so what level are we, what level of students are we looking at? We need to see what communicative competences are we trying to achieve through my tasks. Look at AI's limitations. Very important to keep that always in mind when creating something, and as well see what kind of ethical framework do I have for applying, for using generative AI. So yeah, who and where are my learners? Where is also a good question. So who are they? Are they online? Are they in person? Right? Are they in my classroom physically? So what can I do differently, or what are the needs differently for an online learner versus in person? How many hours a week do I see them? Are they my classes synchronous, asynchronous, hybrid, and to what extent? And what part most of our courses are obviously a mix. What is my age? So do I have younger learners, people with jobs, or students full-time? What's the generation that we're dealing with? Or is it even a mix? Yeah. And I said, where are they located? Are they all in the same area so that they can meet and interact with each other, or are they across the globe, what we very often have in our online classes? And additionally, what is or are the cultural backgrounds? Yeah, and it's deliberately in plural, because not only because of the plurality of our students, but many students even have multiple cultural backgrounds and also sensitivities. So what's my objective? So what's my starting point? And my main goal and yours also is very often to any materials, anything that I create has to be anchored in the proficiency standards from ACTFL, or the Common European Framework of References, so that I can create level appropriate and comprehensible activities, and also clarify the objective. So what is my learning goal? Not just, oh, great, this is a tool. As we know as language educators, there's always these tools that get thrown at us that we're supposed to buy and pay money for, that our schools or university don't have. So what are my objectives? So what can I actually create myself? And I actually do not need an outside tool, just because on what is my learning goal. So do I really need a fancy app with 5 avatars to choose from? Or can I just create something simple that also will achieve the same learning goal for my students, and that is then more adoptable? And also, what are my expectations for oral proficiency and communicative competence when I try to create an assignment? Is it going to be more scripted, or are we really looking into free speech activities, and how authentic with the limited vocabulary that our students have, will I try to create something, or what can I use? How can I use AI to create as much of authenticity as possible? As I said, we're always drawn between these two sides. Yes, the classroom in itself already is artificial, and we're still trying to create an authentic or immersive experience. But we know that we really can't achieve it, but how can we still come as close as possible, and how can AI be supportive in that? And then one thing to also keep in mind, yes, as I said, AI, I always call it, it's kind of like a TA that is very, very good with words, yeah, but doesn't really know the subject. So even if it has fluffy words and tells me all these things, I try to look through that fluff and see what is really the content. So we need to expect imperfect output, and always be prepared to adjust, change according to our needs. I'm sure you have made these experiences. So anything you create or let AI help you create, it is expect errors, and also with almost every day when you wake up and you try to do it again, there might be a new update, a change, or a new development. And I'll show you one example on how this changed something that I created. And again, also, what is our ethical compass when doing this, right? Are we looking at equity and accessibility? So, or when we are creating things with the help of AI, what about cultural sensitivities? Yeah, AI has its own cultural set of ideas, and I read a short article from Harvard about where is GPT culturally anchored. And interestingly, it's very close to German. So it's probably helpful for my German learning, but other cultures in ChatGPT are very far removed from each other. So it might miss many, many cultural cues. And it can also obviously create many materials with biases. And I will show you an example of that as well. So, these are what's your ethical framework and what are your principles? What are you trying to achieve? Can I include more learners, or is it exclusive because students have to maybe purchase access to a tool and things like that? So now I want to go into a couple use cases of how I applied AI. Said if you feel like, oh, this is all news, I've done the same, I'm actually glad. I'm happy to see that many of you are doing that. This is just what I've been using. One is for role plays, one is for gallery walks materials, one is infogap activity, video annotations, and then the last one will be conversation practice. And these are all more from the elementary level. I've also worked on intermediate for more complex activities as well. So one use case was just in my second or third lesson when we just learned introduction. So we're trying to have students branch out a little bit, not just only talk about themselves, what wie heißt du, woher kommst du, so where you're from, what's your name, but have them impersonate other people. And the example in the book was Nobel Prize winners was one of them. So there were a couple examples. I didn't really like them too much. I said, how can I maybe change it, improve it? So it was about basic introductions and phrases. And the idea was to be able to talk about other people, not only about themselves. The role play setup was students represent different Nobel Prize winners. They meet in a cafe or before they were all receiving their prizes and introduce each other by mingling. Yeah. So I basically just threw this into ChatGPT. That was in fall, and I got some nice mini exercises. It was all correct. They were all Nobel Prize winners. I double checked. And then students were just supposed to be, what's your name? What are you known for? And what did I get the Nobel Prize for? Yeah, so great. So instead of just having only 7 or 8, I had one Nobel Prize winner for every single student in the class. So they were able to branch out. And I did the same. It went well. Students really liked it. They felt empowered that they were talking about something else but themselves. Then in the spring, I did the exercise again. I went back to ChatGPT, see what I could do. I noticed, first of all, 2 things. So in my first version, all it gave me was male Nobel Prize winners. There's quite a few German female Nobel Prize winners. So I said, okay, let me do this again. We need female Nobel Prize winners. And then I was trying to see, what can we maybe do with visuals to make it more personal? Because yes, I mean, we all might know William Röntgen, X-ray or Max Planck, but probably everybody knows who Albert Einstein is. He has an image of it, but this just tried to make it a little bit more realistic and to have faces with it. And next time I would obviously maybe even try to add a little bit more information. And I think these little visuals also helped a little bit students to see and understand what they were talking about, what area their Nobel Prize winner is from. This was just like one very simple exercise, but I ended up really liking those note cards. And next time I will probably improve it one more. A use case too, we all know that a gallery walk is a favorite way of getting students to present. So it was elementary too. It was daily life in the GDR, and the learning outcome was to relate, to present, and to discuss your childhood toys in the GDR. And the task was, so students in pairs received information about one of those toys that I put on here on the side, and create a small mini presentation on the board, and then doing a gallery walk where I usually if they have students in pairs or in groups of 2 students stay. The students stay, one of the preparers stays at their board, and then another one walks around, so that you get a lot of communicative opportunities to present and to talk. So, and I said, I'm not from the GDR. I just generally know a few things about it. I knew about some of the toys. So I asked ChatGPT, first of all, give me a couple of the toys that were popular in the GDR. And I of course, have enough knowledge to see that certain of them are correct. So all of the ones that I showed in the first bit, they are toys. And then I asked ChatGPT to give me a short summary, also some of the words, so that students then from that created a presentation themselves, also using relative sentences. This was one challenge. And then I said one student walked around, another student stayed and gave a presentation, and then we switched roles. But this was quite elaborate. It would have probably taken me a lot of time to prepare. And then the exercise itself was maybe 15 minutes long, like 5 minutes prepare, 5-6 minutes prepare, and then walk around and discuss. So this helped me really create very meaningful prep work for a gallery walk that also had a good amount of cultural depth. Use case, and we're still with GDR now, comparing GDR and the West German experience, practicing perfect. And the idea was, all these exercises are, of course, part of a larger pedagogical goal. Several content as well as grammar topics are supposed to be covered. So this was just another one where it was about learning how to relate to the different experiences, but at the same time practicing perfect, like present perfect, in context. So students received an infographic text, and they talked about their experiences in the GDR versus the West Germany, based on the infographic activity that they got. And this was just an example, as we've talked about. So evening TV in Germany had a called Sandman, who always read a little bit of a good night story. And the left one is the version that German children were watching in the West. And then the one on the right was the Sandman from East Germany. And students had already learned a lot more things about the different childhood experiences. And this was like a simple roll card, and it took me like 3-4 minutes to create it. As I said, I'm sure you've done similar things as well. But the nice thing was how well it was culturally embedded, and more than I would have probably been able to do without more extensive research. And so this way, I had the content, I had the grammar. So there were certain things I had to fix, but even grammar content-wise, I had to double check a few things. But it was really well received by the students as well. The last one was video annotations. So this was elementary 2 as well. It was about sustainable production, sustainable fashion, and shoe production, local versus global. And here it was a video where it showed how the German has a strong tradition in shoe production, especially orthopedic shoe tradition. And this was compared to like fashion shoes, and like how things were, mostly these handmade items are shipped around the world, which is obviously not sustainable. So we watched the video, first of all, for some general understanding of context in class. And then I gave them I took the transcript from YouTube and put it into ChatGPT, simplified it to a more understandable level, and I'll show you. And then based on that, students were supposed to become specialists for one of the parts of the video, and then they would be paired in groups, in small groups, or walk around. And one time I had them walk around, one time I had them sit in groups, each of them being the expert, and then discuss the content based on it. So here's, the video was here, even the word maßgeschneiderte Schuhe aus Pennen, and nobody would probably know what maßgeschneidert means. Yeah, so it means, and so the whole video was very complex, but the topic itself was very simple and relatable for elementary 2. So I simplified the text a little bit, then had, with the help of ChatGPT, create questions based on each paragraph, and then have students in groups, in small groups, just work through the one paragraph and then be the expert for the specific paragraph. And that would give them then a conversation opportunity in a group where then students asked each other the questions. So, was ist das Problem der Patientin? So what's the problem of the patient? Yeah, was ist der Beruf? So then students, based on that, were able to communicate with each other on a rather complex topic, but in a way that they were still empowered to do it themselves without much intervenence of the instructor. So I was still able to just be the facilitator, maybe to help with one or two things on this side. Yeah, so these were just four examples. So would you want to share also a few other ways or maybe similar ways that you have used AI, Gen AI, or for creating communicative tasks? I would be very interested to see.
As she's sharing the poll, if you can't see it, I can tell you some of the things that people are writing.
Yep.
They have community, spiraled practice opportunities, lots of input and feedback, tying concepts to real world examples, dialogues, conversations, multimodal language use, useful in real life, practicing using it regularly, non-corrosive feedback, authentic language use context. I love using AI to offer lots of chances for low-stakes practice, repetition and consistency, immersion, activation, interaction with the language, full connections, meaningful exposure, repetition, and active use of the language.
Thank
Watching
you.
videos and reading. Yeah, there are
Yeah.
loads of answers coming in
Oh,
here.
of course, because we're all language educators, so we have a lot to
Yes.
say about this. And I hear many things about authentic communication, real life interaction. So this is what we're striving for, right? Our goal as language educators is to have as much of an immersive experience as possible. We like to teach all four modalities. We want to connect language and culture learning, so that through language we learn culture, and through culture we understand the language, and that it is a real world preparation for our students, so that when they come to a foreign country, they can really interact, that they can function in the society. So task-based learning is one of our goals, and that it's student-centered. So what do our students need and want depending on their age, their environment, their needs? So we all do this under the umbrella of proficiency-oriented language education. And how do we get there? So I said that's very much standard in our profession, that we're trying to do a communicative approach, right? That we're trying to get students to talk, to communicate, to interact, because we know it boosts self-assurance, it improves comprehension of culture, immersion, and it encourages hands-on learning, and really promotes like the functional use of the language. Because what does it help if we just know the grammar and we cannot order a bread roll, which is important in Germany. You have to order bread rolls, a bread roll. And it's also a very cultural experience because of the many different words that exist for bread rolls in German. You go on Instagram and you can find many examples. And I'm sure in your own language, you have examples like this as well. So yes, this is the ideal immersive communicative language learning. So what pedagogical tools are we using? Role plays, of course, are very popular, right? We're trying to create real life scenarios like ordering food, or going to a restaurant, asking for directions. In a higher level classes, we try to create discussion opportunities. We see if students can build on each other's ideas, create their own concept scenarios. We have problem solving tasks, so we give them a challenge that they have to solve. For example, buy a train ticket, get from A to B. We use infogap activities very often in classrooms, requesting, inquiring about information with a partner, so that students don't sit alone, but maximize their class time for interaction, for communication. So since these are all like I think we can all agree that these are some of our favorite, and there's several more, obviously, that create that authentic, immersive experience for the students. But my question is, what challenges do you experience when preparing these communicative tasks as an educator?
Okay, independent speaking practice with voice mode. Escape rooms.
Oh,
Empathy-mediated communication. To generate pronunciation practice in context. Generating comprehension questions from video transcript. AI-created dialogues. For vocabulary, grammar, and assignments, I use AI to make play scripts for my students. Interview a movie director. Pair discussions of a legal case. interpersonal communication activities, role play activity, Socratic questioning, generate short opinions for discussion, reading comprehension text, generate pictures related to the content and discussions on where culture characteristics of the AI pictures, translanguaging, students prepare an investigation with AI English and then present it in Spanish. Writing tasks, ideas for games to practice speaking. Similar to what you presented, location-based game, sometimes though it takes just as long to check what the AI produces for mistakes. Practice for TOEFL speaking, create a video speaking partner, interviews, simulations, conversational partner activities, generating questions for four-corner activity, teaching, debate, speech, role-playing, education. They're slowing down. I'm looking in the chat now. Colleagues of mine have used the chatbot for medical Spanish interviews, simulated medical and nursing interviews, creating an image after discussion, tests, debates, role-playing. I think the responses are coming in a bit more slowly now.
Yeah. No, this is really all great. And I think that really shows the trend that especially for language learning, language educators, this does really present an opportunity to create tasks for our students and additional practice opportunities on so many different levels. As I said, I just tried to show a few, and as I said, we could really create a whole portfolio, probably write a whole book about how many opportunities there are. If, as one of the participants says, we of course monitor closely the output, and again, and sometimes it really depends on the task. Sometimes it's more tedious to fact check to see if ChatGPT does everything correct. They're not, but so that's kind of the balance we have to find. And also with the developments in technology, certain things that currently don't work correctly will eventually, maybe in some areas, work better and others not. But as we all know, still, we as an educator, and I think this is one of the main points that I'm making, we are the ones who are still needed and who are the ones who need to drive the output and also the input. So we are the ones who are inputting our ideas, inputting our learning outcomes, our proficiency goals that we want to achieve. I just saw an article yesterday in Fortune where it said that because of AI, people with an education in the humanities will be more in demand than ever before, just because we need the judgment of what is a tool or what is an outcome that is what we want to achieve, and we also need people who have the ideas of how we want to use AI for the best. And it was said that humanities, and we of course need to include languages, which is the cultural understanding, will be more in demand than ever. So I think if we play our cards right, this can actually be very, very helpful for us, and hopefully even bring more students into our classes, because they can also see that language learning is really more than just, grammar and repetition and vocabulary drill, but we have even more immersive and interactive ways for teaching and learning. So my last use case is about independent conversations practice, and interesting enough that's basically how I started. This was my first time even thinking and using ChatGPT and AI for language learning. And the reason why did I start with speaking practice, which does not seem to be the most logical first step, but it came because at that point when AI was launched, and I was at Arizona State Universities, we were one of the first universities, the first university actually, to have a collaboration with OpenAI. And there was a challenge, the OpenAI challenge, for faculty to submit a proposal of what they want to use ChatGPT for. It was really an open call. Whoever wants to submit something should submit their proposal based on their needs. And I was very interested. I said, okay, I really want to explore this tool for my students. But and my starting point was, as I said, pedagogy driven. What are my students' biggest need? And when you teach online, when you develop online courses, I think everyone who does understands that that heartache that you have for students, that you cannot see them or be interactive with them as often usually as in a traditional classroom. Yeah. So in our situation, we were able to meet with them only once, based on also university regulations. We were only able to meet with them once a week with an instructor, also with time limit, time restraints, with 60, 70 students in one class. And if you want really meaningful interaction, you have to divide them up in different smaller groups. So you could only have an instructor teach that many different groups. And then as the second pillar, we developed peer meetings for the students, so that in addition to one instructor meeting, they also had a peer meeting, which they still have. But as we all know, even that is limited. And if it's not monitored by an instructor, it really depends a little bit on the group, how good the outcomes are. And if you think about how many minutes students in reality really have speaking opportunities, it is probably very low. So even in a classroom, yes, we do have students maybe 2, 3, ideally 5 times a week. But that's also just 1 hour a day. So even if you're not only thinking of online students, for in-person students, it is the same situation. They do not have a full immersive experience, which we always say you have to go into the country to really have that experience. But maybe is there a way to close the gap a little bit more between in-person or online education not in the country and the real experience in the country? How can we bridge that gap even more? And I thought, okay, at that point, if AI can really talk and have a conversation, then this would actually be the ideal supplement. I'm clearly not saying replacement, but supplement to a interaction in the classroom. So you could see it. What are the several ways of getting meaningful interaction? Of course, writing, practicing vocabulary, mechanics, then practice with AI, then practice in the classroom, then go into the country and practice there. You could even have AI as an additional tutor helping you refine, improve. You could possibly even there record conversations for rehearsal. So there's more and more opportunities. But my first goal was my online learners. My heart's aching for their speaking opportunities. I want to give them more opportunities. So I started with elementary 1 again, because yes, you can talk with ChatGPT or other tools, Gemini, on a rather advanced level rather easily. But the problem is more for beginning learners who have a limited vocabulary, and really also depending on what the materials that you use teach, they have different vocabulary available. So I tried to develop something for elementary German 1 that is just about introductions, hobbies, times, family, and schedule. And the basic idea was, yes, practice, but at the end of the day, almost do mini speaking assessments with them. So that instead of before, we were only able to have them record themselves for feedback. So then my idea was to have them record themselves speaking with AI, and then have an evaluation of their learning, of their current status of language proficiency, and give them feedback and suggestions on how they can improve. So the idea was in the beginning to have it more evaluative than practice. But obviously to get to that evaluation, you need practice. So, and that's why also from the inception, the goal was not just to have a conversation, but also ideally receive immediate feedback. Why immediate feedback? Because with the immediacy, you have faster way to react and even adjust and practice again. And secondly, immediate feedback is something that I, as an instructor, can usually not give if a student is in an online environment. And even in classroom environment, maybe give feedback here and there, but it is not consistent. And then we also usually only have 1 or twice per semester where we can give students little speaking assessments. So if ChatGPT can also, again, bridge that gap between classroom feedback, then feedback at home through ChatGPT, and then feedback by an instructor, and later feedback in the country by other native speakers who tell you that they understand or don't understand what you say. So yeah, as I already mentioned, my challenges were limited availability of speaking partners. yes, we could do the peer meetings, but if you overload students with additional meeting times, that it really very often collides with their different schedules and their different personal situations. People are also in different time zones, they have different work schedules. And again, regardless what you teach online or in person, the contact hours are always limited. Feedback is to some extent always delayed. And if they do practice with other tools, for example, so yeah, just do some Duolingo on the side or any other app, it's still an issue that it really doesn't necessarily match the course content, and it is beneficial, but we can't really measure how beneficial it is, and especially in an online environment. But we also experience in the classroom speaking anxiety is definitely an issue with first of all, everyone, right? And everyone who has ever even learned a foreign language, like, it's no joke. Yeah, it really is something where you have to get over yourself and be courageous in ways you're not used to. So yes, having a tool that some of you already used it that way, is that you would have a limitless available speaking partner in technically unlimited context hours and immediate feedback, and you could build it around your class content. And yeah, students for the first time, that's actually a novelty, would have privacy while they practice. So at Arizona State University, we built a custom GPT I called it Language Buddy, just because I thought, I don't know, maybe that makes students like it a little bit better when instead of just calling, here's your custom GPT. It was first built for our online learners for interpersonal speaking practice. It was based on my course curriculum, and I generated the topics, and from the beginning tried to implement actful-based feedback. I'm deliberately not saying they were taking an OPI. It was really just based on proficiency standards.
ChatGPT Voice can now facilitate real-time conversational speech between the person and the AI. An assistant teaching professor of German at ASU has developed a custom GPT called Language Buddy to offer personalized language learning practice anytime, anywhere. The custom GPT offers a series of prompts to facilitate beginner to intermediate conversation practice in German.
Hallo, ich heiße Benedikt.
Hallo Benedikt, woher kommst du?
Ich komme aus Ratingen in der Nähe von Düsseldorf in Deutschland.
Das ist beeindruckend, dass du so viele Sprachen gelernt hast. Hast du ein Lieblingshobby?
Ja, ich gehe gerne klettern, sowohl Indoor-Klettern als auch in der Natur.
Oh, das klingt toll. Kletterst du oft in New York?
Language Buddy provides students with real-time conversations at their level and provides a transcript of the conversation to their professor to provide additional feedback.
So yeah, this video was made from the very beginning because OpenAI was trying to introduce OpenAI EDU. So this was part of showing people how to use AI constructively in a positive way. And this is really where we really have a way to promote how AI can be used, because in our field there's really many use cases, and this is also something that then other instructors can use. So this was at Arizona State. Now we're at NYU, and we're building a similar tool because it was very successful with the students. They really enjoyed practicing with it. I could see that they started speaking longer than they even would practice with a speaking partner. They were sometimes a little bit skeptical in the beginning, and I will get to that in a little bit. But then generally I could really see a positive impact, especially in the online environment where speaking anxiety is a very big issue. So I'm building something similar now at NYU. So we already started building a prototype. We're currently working on testing and feedback. And what is my pedagogical goal here? It is we have as we all know, maybe not every language, but German is one of those who has been struggling with enrollment since I think I got a statistic lately, since 1970s, German is down 75% in enrollment. Yeah, and the trend continues. So our goal is to really reach out to more people, show them that not only language, learning is important, is that we're all struggling with justifying that. But in German, it's very immediate. And one way we're trying to do this is to integrate it in a course that is specifically for STEM students, because Germany has many, many job opportunities for highly qualified STEM students. But we always have this issue with STEM students that their schedule is so fully packed that they very often cannot make time to come to our regular classes who meet 3 to 5 times a week. So we're creating another, many of you have that as well. We're creating a hybrid course, and the goal of having a speaking tool is to create a third lesson that is as communicative and immersive as possible. And the speaking tool will be one of them. And I'm also working on other tools as well. So again, pedagogy first, not just create a speaking tool, but what is my main reason? And of course, we can use it in our regular classes as well. What does it look like on a practical side? So it's always different depending on what institution you are at. At Arizona State, we had OpenAI as a partner. Arizona, here in NYU has Gemini. So in order to get access to OpenAI, just to continue the work with what I've been working with before, the university has to buy access to OpenAI through an API key, which is like directly a direct connection of the LLM to the university internal system. So I'm not a tech person, but this is as much as I understand. It does have some limitations, but the advantage of it is that you basically create a custom platform that is adjustable from your tech team inside your university. So it's not just ChatGPT, but it's really internal, so that also any questions about FERPA or data security and even certain things that might not work from a technical point of view can be adjusted by your tech team internally. And you don't have to just say, oh, this is what OpenAI does or Gemini, and I can't really change or fix it. But there are some limitations on what models and what functionalities are available, depending on what your university has or can afford, because all of this is always then attached with a price tag from your institution's side. So yes, we always, of course, have to create a system level prompt. System level prompt means, again, more for a custom GPT. Instead of prompting each time you want an output, you create one that's fixed. Yeah. And you wonder, oh, she doesn't give me all your details. What does the prompt look like? And I have to tell you, the best person to tell you how to prompt is actually your LLM. Yeah. You ask ChatGPT, Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, hey, give me a basic system level prompt. This is my learning goal. This is what I want to achieve. And it will give you something which will then not fully work. Yeah. So whatever system level prompt you have is just will just be a starting point. It's actually going to be a constant work in progress for you to work on this system level prompt with the feedback from ChatGPT, feedback from colleagues, and it also works different in different languages. That's also something we need to keep in mind. German is relatively advantageous because it has much material online. It's, I think, after English and Spanish, it's the language that's has the most content on the web that an LLM can pull from. And if you have a less commonly taught language, you will run into a different situation. But the system level prompt is that it's just one cornerstone. From my experience, what's even more important is your knowledge base. Yeah, so that you have something that the GPT that you're creating can pull from. And that is even more important than the prompt. So, and that creates a little bit of an issue because many of us are using textbooks. Yeah? So the question is, am I actually allowed to input a textbook that I don't have the rights for into a knowledge base? I'm not sure about this. Whatever I have put into my knowledge bases was always my own materials that I created, but that's sometimes a little bit is obviously not as comprehensive as a whole textbook with vocabulary lists. So if you have your own materials, this is actually great. Then you can just put all of this in the knowledge base. We had a situation here. I do work with the textbook, but our team of NYU Berlin created their own materials for elementary German, with audio files, with vocabulary and grammar and PowerPoints and tests and everything. So I was able to put this into a knowledge base. And but then what you also have to review is like how accessible are some of these files. So you might even have to change the format. It usually can best read Excel or Word documents. So with PDF, it sometimes struggles to identify what is what. So the more detailed and clear and easily accessible your knowledge base, the better the outcome is. So in our situation now, because it's our own internal GPT, I am able to create several different knowledge bases that I can then combine, which I like really much. So I have all my Berlin materials in one knowledge base, but then I have the ACTFL proficiency standards and the CEFR standards in 2 separate knowledge bases. And depending on what I want to do, I can either attach one or the other, and then I can even compare what the outcome is. So I think that's really helpful. And also eventually, if I get access to a textbook, I could add that instead of the Berlin textbook. So that gives me lots of flexibility. But again, our tech team told me there's certain PDFs, for example, that ChatGPT cannot fully access. So even if you have them in your knowledge base, they won't be accessible. The second thing is I always, when you work on open ChatGPT, I would always turn off web capability. It does not mean that it doesn't use the web at all, but it really stays much closer to your knowledge base that you feed. The second very important thing I found are a few short examples. So these are example conversations. What would be an ideal conversation that the GPT should have with your student? Put in, of course, don't just put in one because you want to have a variety. So put in a variety of different examples of what for your task, for your scenario, what should be example conversations, and use some of the vocabulary and grammar forms even from your teaching materials to get it as close to the goal that you want to achieve. This does not mean that ChatGPT does only use these examples, but it really gets closer to what was my experience to what you want to achieve. The other part that I really want to emphasize is student skill building, meaning in the second round, we noticed much better outcome when we specifically trained students on expectations of the tool and how to handle things like a communicative breakdown and give them strategies on how to deal with it. Because at the end of the day, most students, and it's true until today, have not used ChatGPT for speaking practice. It is something that they usually only do when guided by us. So if we guide them, we also need to guide them on what they have to expect and how to use the tool, like how we would also explain to them how to use it. We don't have to explain them anymore how to record a video, but this is actually a different situation. So here, for example, just as an intro, we try to tell them what expectations are, because in the beginning, students were frustrated. They were like, oh, it's way too fast. Oh, I didn't understand it, or it didn't understand me. But then we said, well, you can also see it as a communicative competence trainer. So if you live in Germany and you have talked to a stranger on the street, they also might immediately not understand you, or they also immediately might talk more and longer than you expected. But then you have to see, how do I manage and control the situation? So we told students to, again, first of all, do not expect just a back and forth like in traditional online learning tools, but more like, you don't know what to expect, but expect that. So then that means if they speak too fast, and maybe we give them some words, I could say, I do not understand. In Germany, can you repeat? Can you say this again? Or can you say this easier? And then usually ChatGPT basically listened and followed the instructions, and sometimes said, hey, if it doesn't work, it's okay to start over, because very students, as you know, they look for the grade, they want to do well. So you want them to, they ask you, what do I do so I get an A? Also in the beginning, we gave them full points just for completion and just feedback. That's also important to say, what is the expectation here? Do I have to have the perfect conversation? No, it's more about practice and at this point. And eventually also when ChatGPT or whatever tool you build works better, then you can change the learning outcomes and expectations. The other thing is also data collection and research. Depending on what tool you have, do you have options for data collection? Because that's actually very important for two purposes. One is for feedback. Yeah, you can take the more data you can record, like for one student, imagine you have conversations from a student from recorded in the background as transcript as well as audio from elementary 1 through intermediate, and then you could give them feedback with the help of AI based on their progress and what areas they still have to work on for further improvement. The second one is also research. We want to see what is actually working, how are students reacting, what are some measurements that can, again, also help with improving the learning experience, but also improve their learning. Like what is their word frequency? Yeah, we can look at pauses, conversation lengths. Again, also, so this is how it is set up here at our school right now. So this project was incorporated in a larger project where several professors are working on it started as tutor bots. We got grouped in with the tutor bots. So what you see in blue here are math tutor bots, and then there's one from physics, and German is the orange one. But so I'm basically benefiting from an infrastructure that they already built for tutor bots that are just in writing, and with language they added a new feature which is audio. And then there will another one through psychology, they will add video as well, so that we eventually will have an internal platform that anyone can use that is then also collects the data. So this is the block where they're collecting the data. So it's all blurred out on purpose because it's all like internal information, the details, and those are for the data collection. And then we will have an interface that professors can use for both evaluating students, but also doing research and comparative research, even with different disciplines. I said, and yeah, the speaking practice is definitely something to look into in the future. Duolingo released a study. They said AI-powered video calls significantly improved English speaking skills for Japanese learners, and they could really see a score increase of their English tests based on the video calls compared to a control group. One last thing I want to highlight, and which I find quite important to consider. What I just mainly talked about the pedagogical considerations, but we also need to consider the practical aspects. So first of all, technology. So what is available in your institution? What do you have access to already? What can you tap into? So what partners does your school have, or what do you need? As I said, at ASU, we had OpenAI, but we also eventually switched to a different provider because of to be able to better manipulate the outcome. NYU Gemini, but we wanted OpenAI, so we had to create new access. So what is your access? So yes, your school might say, oh yeah, we have Copilot, but can I actually build something, or is it really just for individual questions? And then also cost factor, is there a budget? Is there something you can tap into, or other projects you can join? So for the knowledge base, again, always make sure you have materials that you can put in and consider possible rights, maybe even reaching out to your textbook companies. Partnerships, I think that was a big one for me. So I wouldn't have been able to do it without partnerships that also reached not only within my own department. As I said, I started reaching out to French. We're talking to Russian, Chinese, and other languages to use the same infrastructure. But also, what this really requires is to reach beyond your own regular area and to other, especially the tech side, maybe your online learning arm. So to see if there's others who are work from the technical side, and you could start creating partnerships, which is what we did at Arizona State. I started in the School of International Letters and Culture, and then it turned into a direct collaboration with Ed Plus, which is our online teaching arm. Then again, from the design point of view, do not expect a perfect product from the very beginning. It will always be, at least at this point, an iterative design approach where you always have to adjust. And then also from the very beginning, consider research. What are you interested in? To find out, so that you already set up structures for data collection that also that you maybe think of an IRB, and also again, how do you even access data that you want to use for study? Is it surveys or is it really the speaking data on the back end? And then also, yeah, I want to see where do you want to end up? What are your goals? So this was basically just speaking. I said we've also been starting developing avatars that are embedded in cultural settings. Yeah, so you can obviously think as far as we want. And that's just one thing that I just did on my own. I started thinking of speaking, partner speaking, conversation practice on ChatGPT. There's an app called Sora, and I played around. Maybe this is my profile picture. And then I just fed it into Sora, and this is what Sora did with picture, and Sora basically animated my picture. And what does that have to do with the speaking tool? Yes, I mean, technically I could create myself as a speaking partner with a student or somebody from Germany, or again, create maybe eventually a scene. So this was just my profile picture, but maybe eventually I can put in a restaurant setting behind it, again, another person, and easily create interactive experiences that are not just speaking and listening, but are also immersive. And I know that many of my colleagues who work with VR have already been much further with this as well. So, my last question, which will probably already lead into the discussion, would be, how do you envision the future of learning and teaching languages with AI? Yeah, so, I mean, these were just my ideas, but I think there's much more.
Oh, somewhat just one answer, rather pessimistic on the whole. Very clearly defined, legitimate usage of AI. Somebody says challenging. Individualized and adaptive language learning. I think AI can be a useful tool. Treating AI with respect. AI is a friend, not a foe. Thinking about language learning will be much more accessible. Students would use AI to coach their learning and meet or surpass the learning outcomes at every level. Students leveraging AI to build confidence and eventually becoming bilingual health professional who promote health equity. More support for online independent learning. Personalized language teaching using AI as an assistant. Someone is a little worried about less people wanting to take language courses with real people because they mostly think AI can do it all for them. AI is a new tool. You have to learn how to use it. So there's a lot of talks about, being able to personalize language instruction, providing instant feedback, and enabling immersive practice. And then also the idea that, it could free teachers to focus on communication, creativity, and human connections.
Yeah, I think these are all very, let me share my slide again. I think these are all very, very valid points. Yeah, so I think these are all very valid points, and I think and also concerns, right? And I also I share the same concerns, and I think the only way to basically stay in the driver's seat is to show how this is still only a tool, and that this, yes, can enhance or maybe assist language learning, but at the end of the day, also people know, right, that what is language all about? It's about human connection. Yeah. And how do you create human connection? You do not create human connection with a bot. Yeah. And I felt, my sense is that also this generation now, yes, they do have all the technology, but there's also a level of skepticism, and maybe they're like, they're over it. They say we've been so much teched out. Everybody's trying to throw this tech about. We want real connection. And I think that's the thing that AI still cannot replace is real experiences, the same as our classroom cannot replace study abroad. Yeah. So that still does not mean we do not want our students to learn a language in the classroom. It does help. Everybody who has some language learning before going abroad has, in my opinion, usually a better experience than somebody who just goes with zero language. Yeah, and I think so. Therefore, I think focusing on also to make the humanistic reasons for language learning. Yeah, so language learning is not mechanics. It's really about understanding the world, understanding cultures, understanding people, and making meaningful connections. And I think this is more how we will have to maybe also be a little bit more vocal about yes, what is the value of language learning? And again, if we and it really helps students and also administrators, yeah, understand how, especially in an age of AI, giving students different perspectives on different cultures is invaluable. Yeah. Dankeschön. And maybe there's some questions. I just want to leave a little bit of room for that.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through some of the questions that our participants have posted. I think maybe you answered this question, but just in case our attendees missed that information, someone is asking about, did you create the chat bot? So I think you sparked a lot of interest with Language Buddy. Did you create the chat bot with tech support, or can instructors do this on their own?
I would say yes and no. Yeah, I would say yes. Basically, every instructor can create a basic form of a chatbot themselves. I think that is relatively easy as long as you have builder access to a tool, like whatever it is, a large language model, and you have access to creating your own custom GPT, then you can do it. As I'm really not a tech person, and really the very first model is what I created myself. I tested it out myself. I had no tech support at all. It really just happened in the second semester. And my main goal was to really figure out how can tech help me support, refine, set better guardrails, maybe some of them that are, as a programmer, you can then say, okay, you can never use whatever word XYZ, right? Or do never pull from these and these sources, something that you can almost like turn on or off on the tech side. And also my vision from the very beginning was to make it a visual experience. Yeah, not just an audio. I was really looking into not VR, but really more like an immersive, gamified experience, ideally eventually going to a marketplace, going shopping, go from vendor to vendor. Of course, this is all very tech involved, and it's not me, but yes, the basics, that's what I'm trying to encourage everyone. You can do it. Two issues, so more like is really with data privacy, right? If you do work in a public institution, very often you cannot share your own personal account, right? And then students have to access it. So you really have to, it's not the tech, it's really more what is permissible in your own environment. And there, as I've seen so many instances where even if it was not permitted, if you make a case for a pilot project to your administrators or maybe to your tech team, and personally, my experience was talking to the tech people was very encouraging because I said, well, finally, we have an educator and a professor come to us with their needs and they're interested in creating something versus us getting a tool from a vendor outside that we then feel like we have to sell to our faculty, which we often do not want to get sold when additional tech tools. So I feel like you can get can have open ears. And if you don't have open ears in one end, just think maybe creatively where else you can create alliances to get that builder access and to somehow get into a pilot project situation. I did all of this so far with zero funding. Yeah, there was no external funding involved, no grant or project money. I'm doing it now, but yeah.
Thank you. So I think also you answered that question, but just in case, is Language Buddy built via with custom GPT or OpenAI's APIs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was with custom GPT, and then it was actually moved also again to a separate LLM that's a little bit more controllable from the tech side, as I said, because ChatGPT already has a fixed surface. So you can't really access the LLM, the large language model behind it. And on the tech side, as I'm not a specialist, but what I understood, you can basically get the LLM without the framework, and then programmers can somehow manipulate it a little bit more. So eventually, if you want to think bigger, you probably have to have your own platform. But for starting, for the start, as long as your institution or your project gets access to a tool, it's definitely just very low tech from a starting point, and I think that's more the exciting part about it.
Again, with respect to Language Buddy, the question is around is about the level of authenticity that can be achieved with such an immersive environment. With Language Buddy, was there any feedback on error correction for the users at the end of the interaction?
Yeah, so the feedback in the beginning was rather, unfortunately, it was overly complex. So for 5-6 sentences, the GPT gave a whole page of feedback, which is obviously unrealistic and not digestible. But it was relatively easy to create guardrails around this, to say make it shorter, just give two praises, what went well, two improvements, and especially in the elementary level, it more or less gave very similar feedback, but it was I found it rather helpful. Mostly things like, oh, instead of saying my name is Christiane, I live in Arizona, I said just connect those two sentences with an and it's more complex, and it already brings you slightly more to the novice high level. So it gave rather practical, or good job, add more adjectives, and for example, and gave you examples from our database that they could use. So I thought it was not too bad, as long as the sample was relatively comprehensible.
Great, thank you. Just quick question. Language Buddy, is it proprietary to ASU, or can anybody access it?
Yeah, so it was, I started the project and built it at ASU, and I actually can't even access it anymore. I had to leave it at Arizona State. So at the moment, and unless eventually there might be, at the moment it was developed, it changed and developed for Spanish. So that's why I'm developing my own here now. And as I said, but I still have I have the capabilities of understanding and how it works. And I think also one of the, eventually it might be maybe available for licensing. Yeah, so that might be an option. You could keep a close eye on that. But what I also wanted to say is really, it's relatively easy to build something yourself, especially keeping your users' immediate needs in mind. Yeah, it does not need to be high tech. It is, you want to work on speaking proficiency. That does not need like a fully immersive, expensive tool.
Okay, so we have, sorry.
I said somebody said Google Language Buddy seems to be available on Google Play. I saw somebody use that name, but I don't think it's the same thing.
So we have two final questions. So since I want to connect with what has happened before, what tips can you share with those among us who want to create chatbots for conversational practice? Are there templates for the prompts that you use? Do you mind sharing? Thank you.
Yeah, as I said, I think the prompt it's important, but as I said, you can see it was more it's a combination, right? It's the prompt, it's the knowledge base, it's how you train your students, and what tech you have available. And all of these are variables. I said, for a starting point, again, just ask Gemini, ChatGPT, hey, I want to build a speaking tool, and I wanted to do this and this and that. So it will be very different, might even be different what your outcomes. I want my students to practice weekly, or or daily, or this much. I want them to get from this level to that. Or do I rather want role plays or immersive experiences or conversations? So you can basically tell the tool, whatever you have, your basic requirements. It gives you a prompt that is, try it out And then you notice what works, what doesn't. And then maybe I need to adjust the knowledge base. Maybe I need to adjust the prompt. And it's a lot of work and just plug and play. So I would not share, because even for my current prompt, that's exactly what I did. I asked ChatGPT to give me the initial prompt. And it was very good so far. And then, of course, but I see the need for tweaks.
Okay, our last question is, how do you approach ethical issues in your activities with AI? Thank you.
So, yeah, first of all, I also shared with our students how is it ethically embedded, and I also gave them a warning saying that it could be that there are inappropriate things. It did not really happen, right? We didn't really have an incident, but making students aware, yeah, that this is not fully controlled by the instructor and that they have to be aware of this and that they should report if something comes up. And again, that's why eventually you want to be able to set guardrails from the tech side. And also in your prompt, you can still say things like, change between male and female, represent people from different backgrounds, like depending on the complexity of your tasks as well. So then that's why I said with it, it's more your responsibility in the beginning to keep all these elements in mind and build it into your first prototype, and then see from there, and also have some students available first for some testing, some students that you trust and that give you honest feedback. And that's usually also always very helpful.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We have we're done. We have no other questions coming from our attendees. As you can see in the chat, there are many thank yous coming your way, or I see little clapping hands moving through on the screen. Thank you so much. And for this really informative webinar, I think our participants, attendees have really enjoyed the information that you shared. And I'm sure that many of them will go back to the recording to kind of take a deeper dive after listening to this webinar.
Yeah, anyone, if you feel free, you can reach out to me, and I'm happy to. I love to collaborate, and everybody's insights. I find the more I collaborate, the more it really helps advance what I'm trying to achieve for my students as well, and for all of our students, and for all the languages, and for language learning, cultural learning in general. I think we got this. We went through every tech phase, and this one will also use for the goals that we want to achieve.
I have a question for you. So, based on the biographical data that you submitted, you're also directing the language program in German at NYU. How do you approach how do you train or your graduate students who are teaching in your program with the use of AI? And I'm just very curious.
Yeah. Yes, I did. I actually also, one of the things I did, I started a workshop where I showed even different examples on how to use it, and in a very practical way, because we have the whole spectrum of people from how most of us here are probably more interested in AI, but there's in every department there's a wide spectrum, and I feel giving people the opportunity to see how we use it in more practical. That's why I also like to show these simple things like a role play, right? That like low stakes opportunities to even get started, and encourage everyone to start because that's the only way to understand how it works, like how you start driving, how do you learn how to drive a car, or you just eventually just have to sit behind the driver wheel and make your own mistakes and try it out, go to different places. So that's what I'm trying to encourage, and I'm also making my materials available to that are created by AI, and I'm also open with my students and the instructors what is created by AI and why. Yeah, so I'm not just doing it to make my life easier. I'm trying to give you more complex, interesting opportunities. And I think with students, I also have one assignment where they are also allowed to use it, but that way they know where it is appropriate and where it is not. Yeah, and so I really don't have much issues with. Of course, you always have the people trying to treat it, but most of the time, I think it's a transparency with the instructors, and also sharing my own concerns is very helpful. And have an open, transparent conversation across the board, with the colleagues as well as the students.
Great. Well, we have reached the bottom of the hour. It is 11:30 Arizona time. So this concludes our webinar. I just want to thank you again, Christiane, for making the time to share your knowledge and experience with AI tools in the language class.